Opening round is in the books, so Checkers and I are back to have a bit of a chat about some of the reactions, some of the changes we've made to our teams, and then some of the players that we like going into round one from an AFL fantasy perspective. How you going, Checkers?
Great. Yeah, good. Feeling a little bit of a lack of football this week because we only had the 2 games, but footy is definitely back this week. There's nothing. I don't think that we can wipe half the roster off this weekend's games, but yeah, 2 games for the opening round was a bit of a stickler. I feel like a bit cheated, but we're back. It's like only a couple more days. We're back again.
So how many games are you going to head to this weekend, do you reckon?
Most definitely 3, maybe 4. We'll see how we go on the sleeping schedule. But definitely going to get to the season opener on Thursday, the Hawks Essendon game on Friday, and then I'm definitely going to go Port Collingwood on Saturday because I think that'll be probably, I'm thinking that'll be the best game of the round. I think that'll be a good clash. You got Dan Houston against his old side, and everyone's going to have their eyes on Daicos and Connor Rosie, and there's a lot of fantasy relevance in that game. So, yeah, I think that'll be the exciting clash of the weekend for me.
No, I think that's going to be a decent matchup as well. I think hopefully Port get the chocolates, being a Port man myself. But anyway, this podcast, or I guess this YouTube video that we do each week, we're kind of talking about the lesser knowns of AFL fantasy, or the pods and the not as well-known players that everyone is going to be talking about, I guess. So I guess the first thing we'll start with is some round 0 or opening round reactions. Are there any players that kind of impressed you, surprised you, made their way into their teams, or just confirmed their spot in your side after the opening round?
Yeah, it's a hard one because we got to see 4 teams play. I definitely on Thursday night, I'm trying to think what night, was it a Thursday night? The first game of the
Friday.
round, shambles, the Sydney versus Hawthorn game. We'll leave it at that. Matt Roberts and Nick Blakey sort of just in a game that was pretty average all round for everyone fantasy-wise, and the media ripped it to shreds, and it was just a bit of a lackluster start to the season. That was the exciting bit of the start of the season, was just seeing Matt Roberts and Nick Blakey take kick-outs, play on, link up with little 15 to 20-metre kicks, and yeah, they both scored pretty well. So I think those 2 are going to be hard to can you start both is the question, but you're definitely going to have one of them, I think.
Yeah.
Yourself?
For my side, Matt Roberts kind of confirmed his way into my side. Not that I really had any doubts, to be honest. Like the first round of the practice games, he put up a pretty low score, but then the following week he put up a huge score. So he was basically confirmed himself from there. For me, it was Will Day. It was the biggest one. His first game against Geelong, I know he was subbed out at halftime in the practice match, but he put up a 70. But he really slowed kind of in the second half, and then I think he missed the last quarter, I think. Or halfway through the third quarter, he came off. So I was a bit worried. And then in the second game, he didn't really do a lot against Essendon either. So I was a bit concerned, but just seeing him do that come round 0, I guess, put up a big score. And the interesting part as well was I think he only had 46% centre-bounce attendances, so spent a fair bit of time up forward as well and kicked 3 goals. Do I think he's going to kick 3 goals every week? Probably not, but I feel like it's just interesting with a slight potential of DPP. Just a player I didn't have because I don't love his injury history, or I feel like he fades in some games, but that was a pretty decent performance.
Definitely, they put it up forward sometimes, and just having the extra option of putting Will Day forward would be interesting to see how the Hawks play that medium mobile forward. But if Will Day gets forward DPP, he's going to become the hottest property in draft leagues. So it could be one where if someone in your draft league doesn't really have too much idea on the value of Will Day in the early few weeks, chuck a few heavy trades at him and prize him off them, because they might not realise that in 6 weeks he's going to be the most prized forward in the comp. So I like that idea. I like the idea that in round 6 he's probably going to get forward DPP. He's not going to kick 3 every week, but he's going to spend 30, 40, 50% game time down there, which would be cool.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit sceptical because they did lose James Worpel on the weekend, so there's one rotation they are down. We might talk about some players that could potentially move into that role a bit later on. But another player that just confirmed himself for me, and I think I mentioned him last week, I've been kind of championing him all preseason, and that's Lachie Ash, coming off that half back line. What'd you make of his game?
He started slow, but then you notice types like this that get cheap ball and get lots of I don't want to say cheap ball because it's not a bit offensive, but get a lot of those chip kicks and the what do they call it when you want to keep the ball in possession late in the end of quarters. So
the slow play.
the slow play. Matt Roberts, Jack Crisp used to be the go to this, but in that junk time specialist, in the last 8 minutes of the game, they can rack up 15 touches sometimes and 15 kicks and a lot of marks. So he started slow, and then in the second half, he went bonkers when the game was sort of sealed on GWS perspective and they just wanted to hold possession. He was in everything. So a lot of marks, a lot of little chip kicks. So, yeah, 125 points. That's a great start. And outscored Whitfield and probably is the future Whitfield if we're looking at the GWS team.
And from memory, I think he's got a pretty decent run coming up. He's definitely made his way into my side. And I was hoping he'd be a bit of a unique for me because I felt like, after the weekend, we might see a few more people putting him in. But I looked at the ownership numbers today and they're still not, they're not huge. So I reckon he's one that could be unique for me. Is there anyone that has kind of kicked themselves out of your side due to their performances on the weekend?
Yeah, I've been playing along with the strategy of those opening round games that got postponed. And I don't know how much to read into it just yet. It probably will be one where it'll go right down to the last 5 minutes before lockout on Thursday, where I'm still wondering, or they're not even lockout anymore, but I'll be thinking, it'll be on my mind until the last few minutes of the fantasy season kicks off. Is now that the Essendon and Gold Coast game is being played and doesn't count for fantasy points, do we have to remove some premium Essendon players from our team? Because I did have a lot in my side to begin with, like Nick Martin. I was looking at Kako, Harrison Jones as a unique we spoke about last week, Elijah Sardis. Like, there's a lot of Essendon players on the table, and I guess Gold Coast players, you could even have like your Rouse, Andersons. I don't know if anyone's rolling with a lot of them, but is that going to make it an issue when they have a bye and they also have another bye and then miss a game later in the year? So I have heard and seen other people putting a few more Brisbane and Geelong players in the team. So ownerships of like Sam De Koning has gone through the roof. Max Holmes, Dane Zorko. I don't know how much to read into it though. Is it just take one player out and put one more Brisbane player in, or does it take all of them out and put 3 or 4 more Brisbane players and Geelong players in? But that's the question that I'm rolling through all week.
Yeah, admittedly, like I put a lot of thought into that last year. And like for the big example last year was Tom Green, not starting with Tom Green because they had the bye earlier on. And then he put up 2 huge monster scores in the first few weeks. And the people that didn't have him were just left behind. And when it came to bye rounds, because he played the best 18, it felt like he didn't need to have as many good players in there because, you're knocking, 4 players out of your side type thing. So I put way less focus on that this year. And admittedly, that's just me as well, not paying as much attention to Classic, probably this preseason going full-time into the Keeper League stuff. But that's something I worried about a lot less this year. And I'm just putting kind of players that I feel like are going to be good scorers anyway, as long as I don't load up on a certain side, which I've kind of been careful to do over their bye rounds. It's something I'm not really worrying about too much. But on that, I think
looking at it, Essendon and Gold Coast players have 3 byes coming up. They'll miss 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Whereas Sydney and Hawthorn players will miss the 1 bye and two weeks off. So it's a hard one where three weeks is a hard gig after those opening rounds. So it really reshuffles your team thinking. But how much is a bye week worth? Like you said, 18 players playing. Is it a 10, 15 point difference that you're really stressing about now? So it could be 10 points in the scheme of things that's stressing me out right now. And the other
thing you're weighing up is probably the cash generation as well. Like you could choose that guy over someone else who could make you cash in that time as well, just because they've got the buy, you know what I mean? And what's more important, 10 points or another, 10, 20, 30 grand in cash in your thing? See, it's I'd love to be like a data scientist or something and work it out, but unfortunately I'm not that smart. The main person that's kind of found their way out of my side for me is James Leake. Is someone I had in my team all preseason, and put up a pretty low score on the weekend. And I think that will factor into his price rise. I think he still hits his break even, whatever that comes out to be, but it's got to be a pretty tough ask for him to continue making any cash for me. So I'm pretty much just going to replace him with the kind of best named rookie, whether that's like a Travalia or something like that, or even like a Reed from Essendon or whatever, the best kind of named rookie that's there.
The Luke Trainer's a good shout to get a gig. I heard that this morning. So I mean, as a defensive rookie, do they always score great? Maybe not. If you get really stuck, I wouldn't be like an immediate flick, be like he's gross. It's just the scoring potential is not fantastic, is it? It might be like he might top out at 60s when we thought maybe early preseason we thought we might top out at a ton or 80. So, it's that tricky one at preseason where they look like they've locked down a new role, and then all the guns come back that we didn't see during the preseason, and you forget that he's got to battle a Josh Kelly, a Stephen Cornelio, or a Finn Callahan to get midfield minutes, and it's quite a hard battle. Did you see? I'm going to stuff this name up, but it's Gruzecki. Grozowski,
something like that.
Grozowski, yeah.
Yeah.
Max Grozowski, yeah. Anyways, he came on as a sub, kicked 2 snags, which is obviously going to inflate his score. I don't think he's going to kick 2 snags every week, but he looked mobile as a forward. And it's just a name that I didn't see on any boards all preseason.
Yeah, in the preseason matches, he was used as the backup ruck a little bit as well. So that's interesting a bit with Briggs out. They might throw him a bit more. I know they rolled Keefe in there afterwards, and I guess there's a chance of Nick Madden coming into the side for GWS as a result of that. But yeah, another one that kind of has been on the radar. Like, looked like he's been, could be in their best 22 come round one throughout the preseason. It's just good to see him play a game round 1, but round 0, sorry. But admittedly, he's not really someone who's crossed my mind that much, but he's a good one to keep in mind given that you've seen them. It's just that, like,
definitely another watch this week.
Yeah. Same with, like, Leak and all those guys. It's like, or Leak especially, like, you've seen how low he's going to score. You'd rather roll the dice on someone who could go bigger rather than someone and then bank that score, you know what I mean? So, that's probably the way I'm looking at it. We might move on to the next kind of segment, the pod of the week. So I reckon we're just going to pick a player each week that no one else is really talking about in terms of the AFL Fantasy Classic world. Give a few justifications as to why they might score well, whether we're actually going to roll the dice with that one or maybe it's just a suggestion. But do you want to give me a name, a point of difference for this week that you've been looking at?
Yeah, I think in future weeks I'll be digging some state league stats up and stuff. But with round 1 this week, first real game of fantasy, I'm just going to name my pod that's in my team. I've just got one real pod. Everything else is pretty safe. The one pod I'm rolling with is Sam Doherty from Carlton. A lot of reasons to not pick him. Obviously, injury history, age, role, questions over what role he's going to play. But at 3.7% ownership, they've got Walt, Newman and Chincotta injured. Jagger Smith obviously went down injured, so there is minutes in the midfield open. There's minutes off the halfback flank open. 2 roles where he scored well in the past. And between now and round 6, they play Richmond, West Coast and North, who are in most of the experts' ladder predictions are the bottom 3 teams. So easy fixture to kick off the year. Opportunities with injuries for a nice, juicy fantasy role, and obviously some great scoring history. I think Sam Doherty is my point of difference I'm going to roll with for round 1.
Yeah, look, I'm just looking at my team right now, and Jesus vanilla when I think about ownership percentage and stuff like that.
It's the best way to play.
My biggest pod by far at the moment is Lockie Ash at the moment, so I've got him in defence. So I've kind of mentioned him already, so I don't really need to talk about him too much. But some guys I'm kind of like not necessarily looking at, but this is more from a draft perspective. That there's a few that I would consider just with a few circumstances. So the big one for me is I like Ollie Hollands as a prospect on the Friday night. You could kind of, get a look at him on Thursday, I guess. And I was thinking about loopholing, but maybe that's a bit, maybe ambitious for a guy that's priced at 640k. You might not want to go that far. But halfback role, I can't see, and he's only, like I said, 640k. He's not going to need a huge score to go up in price for you there. And those halfback roles have been quite fruitful. He could be the guy who kind of jumps into Nick Newman's role, and we all know what that's like as his scoring has been in the past. So Ollie Hollands is one I like the look of there. The other guy I think this is probably more from a draft perspective, but I really like Cam Mackenzie this week with James Worpel going down. Now, since I've done this show doc, it's come out that Worpel's only going to miss 3 to 4 weeks, but yeah, Cam Mackenzie I think saw the biggest bump in CBAs after Worpel went down, and he's only 600k as well. So he might be one to consider in your midfield if you fancy like a sneaky breakout there, and could be a bit of a cash riser there. Looking at my team now, pretty much I've got no one over $1 million in my midfield, and then I've got like most of them around 700k. So I'm going kind of mid prices there anyway. I've got no one around that 500, 600k player in my midfield. So there's room for players like that, but I'm just not sure if I'm brave enough to pull the trigger on someone like that. What are your thoughts on Hollands and Mackenzie?
I'm a big fan of Holland's brother. I think he's going to be like what everyone hopes Jack Silvani was going to become, and Jack Silvani could still become that, but I think Elijah Hollands at one point is going to just be this premium, mid-sized leaping forward. Ollie Hollands, I guess. Zach Williams has been playing forward lately, and my only worry is like that preseason hype and do they need Zach Williams up forward? And if shit starts hitting the fan, do they put Zach Williams back off the halfback? Is that a concern? At the moment, you would, watching the preseason, you say Zach Williams plays forward pocket, but if, say, at halftime, someone's getting off the chain and they need to put a tagger down back or something, or rearrange the back line, Zach Williams be the first one to be dragged back down there. And does that shift Hollands onto the wing? Or that's my question mark. I think I like it. I like the idea. There's a role. There's definitely a scoring role. We've seen Williams score well. We've seen Doherty score well off the halfback flank there before. Newman score so well. So whoever plays that role is going to score well. But yeah, it's just that question mark of, is it locked in yet in Michael Voss's head?
I think there's a few things like they've named Lucas Campriali to be playing this week, whether that's the sub or on field. I think we've got to wait and see what happens there. But like that's a wing spot locked down there, so that hopefully keeps Ollie Hollands back. Blake Acres is not going to play anywhere but on the wing. You've usually got Cottrell that rolls up there as well. Yeah, interesting point about Zach Williams, but I think we saw it enough at the end of last year as well, like played predominantly forward, that if we were going to put someone back to kind of lock down, I feel like they'll use someone like Lockie Cowan or something like that, maybe before they move Williams back, because I think we've just kind of seen it in the past and he's just not as effective in defence as he is probably up forward, well, from the last few games of last season anyway. But anyways, we might wrap it up in a second, but I want you to give me some spicy hot takes for this season. So maybe have a bit of a fantasy twist on this one, but can you give me one hot take or a prediction that you think is going to come to fruition before round one?
Well, the opening Twitter this morning and Instagram this morning, all the first videos I saw were Kane Corns bagging Nick Daicos, all the media on Twitter bagging Nick Daicos, saying that he's washed or he can't handle a tag or he's injured and he's not going to be up to scratch, and obviously cramped on the weekend, and I don't think cramp's a real injury. That's something you can fix in 48 hours. It's not going to be an issue for this weekend. Everyone's like, he's going to cramp again. If he's cramping round 0, he's going to cramp round 1 or whatever they're saying. It's not going to happen because you can fix cramping. You can just take your tablets and you can drink the water and you can sort it. I don't think it's going to be an issue for Nick Daicos. It hasn't been an issue in the past. I think Nick Daicos comes out this week off the back of the 60 that he scored against Port Adelaide, who are missing Zach Butters, who have Connor Rosie with a little bit of a foot concern. And at the MCG, home deck, goes 130 plus, and the concerns go away, and he becomes the Brownlow favourite that everyone was talking about before the start of the season. And all these people are now taking him out of their teams, their fantasy teams, and I've seen team reveals this morning on TikTok and everywhere that you see the team reveals, and Daicos isn't in a lot of them. Don't know why. He's going to come back out and dominate the MCG. That's my hot take for this week. Might not be that hot. Might just be a pretty easy take saying Nick Daicos played good footy, but yeah, I don't think there'll be another cramp this weekend.
Well, I agree with that. I really like that one because I think on the back of this, like, he's still 37% owned looking at the numbers here, but you know that has dropped significantly. I think that was close to about 50%. So he's not quite a pod just yet, but he's a lot more unique than he was, before that week. So admittedly he was someone in my team and I've kind of moved him out, but it was more to do with I felt there was more value cheaper than with him, and just knowing that his price is going to drop after that score, he's not someone I'm going to start with. But I 100% agree. Like, he's a star and not much is going to keep him down. Bit of pickle juice, bit of magnesium, and he'll be fine going into this game. Do you want to hear my hot take?
Yeah, roll us one. Roll us a good hot take.
All right, it's a pretty out there one. Oh, it's not that out there, but it's a big one. Bit more left field than yours. My hot take is Tom Liberatore is going to be the number 1 scorer in the game at round 5. What are your thoughts on that?
That's very fair. I think numero uno, Luke Beveridge, loves him and knows his role very well, and he doesn't know a lot of the other guys at Bulldogs role very well just yet, or he likes to experiment, but he doesn't experiment with Libba. Libba runs his own show and you can't experiment with him, and I think with no Treloar, Bontempelli injured, no Bailey Smith, not that he was an issue last year, but and a lot of young midfielders around him, Libba's going to take control of that midfield. He's a clearance beast. English is going to just be tapping them down to him, hopefully. And yeah, I could definitely see him averaging 115, 120 in the first 5. When Bontempelli comes back and Treloar comes back, who knows? That's probably not going to be about the case. But yeah, he has shown in the past I could imagine a Libba with like 15 tackles at some point in the next 5 weeks, which would be really juicy for fantasy. But
yeah, priced at 900k as well. Like, if you game, you might get a decent price bump and make yourself a quick 100k right there over those first 5 rounds if he can put up some big numbers. But we saw in the preseason game, I think it was against I can't remember what it was, down in Geelong, But that he had a huge score down there. And I think as well, if their midfield is struggling, he's just going to wrap blokes up in tackles as well. And it's just going to be an easy avenue for scoring for him. So, Tom Liberatore is my tip to be the number one scorer at round 5. Anyways, checkers, I reckon that might wrap it up for this week. There's plenty of selections to be done ahead of round 1, so we've got to tinker with our teams, use our time wisely. But cheers for the chat today, and we'll be back next week to see how our teams went.
Yeah, finally, 9 games of footy, not 2. There's going to be an actual full round to debunk next week, which would be good. I can't believe we just got 20 minutes out of 2 games, but we're going hard next week. We're going to give it some extra spicy point of difference players. And I'm going to spend 20 minutes just telling you why you got to get them in your team. But a bit hard to tell you when half of them didn't roll around last week.
Yeah, that's correct.
Should be good. Excited for it.
All right. Thanks for watching this week, and we'll talk to you soon.